impressive. Usually I read some sheet of paper.
I read it this morning.
What's that?
I read your bio this morning. I'm
So,
not that old yet.
A lot of people don't know what asymmetric threats are either. I just came from Florida. I was doing a charity event in Florida, a book event, and so she Googled what is asymmetric threat, and she said, and Brad is an expert on computers, on biological and nuclear weapons, which I am not. I was like, where did that come from? So I asked her afterwards, and she said, oh, I Googled what asymmetric was. And I was like, well, don't trust the Google machine. So I'm going to talk up here about 20 minutes, and when I'm done, I'll entertain questions. So if you have a question, think about what you want to ask, because you can ask about anything, writing books, what I had for breakfast, whatever. I'll answer the question, and I'll make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. So it'll be a good answer. But that's what usually where the most entertainment is answering the questions from you instead of listening to me blather on. So what I'm going to do is I'll just walk you through writing. I always get asked questions of, what's the process for writing a book? So I'm going to walk you through this whole writing process, which will be, everything that I have to do from start to finish. And so usually the first question is, where do you get the ideas for your book? And in this case, Shadow Strike came from the October 7th attack against Israel. Hamas attacked Israel, huge response, and we were looking at it. I still dabble in national security affairs, and we were looking at, we were worried about Israel, but what's the threat against the United States? Because of this activity, do we have the threat? Hamas is kind of a one-trick pony. They're coming out of the Gaza Strip. They're not really going to be a threat against the United States. But Hezbollah is a big threat. Hezbollah is in Lebanon, and they are worldwide, and they have done strikes all over the world. They've killed people all over the world. They tried to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington, D.C. The largest terrorist attack that Israel had ever had prior to October 7th was in Buenos Aires, Argentina. They blew up a Jewish center there and killed 85 people. And so I was looking at those threats, and as it turned out, the reason that Argentina got attacked was the largest preponderance of Hezbollah is in the tri-border region of South America, outside of Lebanon. Lebanon's got obviously most of them, but outside of Lebanon, it's in the tri-border region of South America. And I was like, man, I would have never figured that. And so I started doing a lot of research on that. And the tri-border region is just Wild West. They do, money laundering, drug running, counterfeit goods, you name it, it's all coming out of there. And that's a region where Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil meet. And there's a bunch of rivers there, and it's just completely Wild West. And Hezbollah, when they blew up the Jewish center, came out of the tri-border region. And so that's why I started focusing on it. It's like, okay, there's a serious threat there. I can come up with it. By the way, I did all of this before Iran is going on now. So we'll get to that. So I said, okay, here's what I'm looking at. Obviously, Iran had issues with Israel, has issues with Iran, has issues with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is going to try to get some revenge on Israel because we took out Nasrallah, we took out Soleimani, we've killed a lot of their leadership, so they're going to do tit for tat and get back at it. And the Israeli Prime Minister is going to come down to Buenos Aires on the anniversary of this bombing, which they do every year, come down and commemorate the bombing, and then somebody's going to try to assassinate the Prime Minister of Israel. And that was the genesis of the plot right there. I said, okay, that's the starting point. And so right off the bat, I had to have, it's got to be an assassin. Somebody's got to kill that guy. And so I started creating a character out of whole cloth. Well, because I'm generally lazy, there was, in book 3, I had an assassin called the Ghost who got captured. And he came back in this is what I do, I point to my wife, Polaris Protocol.
5.
Book?
5.
Book 5. You ever see Moneyball when he says, that's what I do with my wife. Polaris Protocol. She says, book 5. I said, Roger that. So he came back in Polaris Protocol, but then he went back to prison and never to be seen again. And I didn't end up killing him because I liked him too much as a character, not so much what he's doing, but as a character, because he's a really conflicted guy. We look at, and I want my antagonist, I want you to understand the motivation of why that guy's doing it, and not, or gal, I've had females as well, Not so much that you agree with what they're doing, but you can see why they are doing it. We too often look at Islamic terrorism and we sit there and say, black and white, you know, that guy's Islamic terrorist, he wants to kill us because we're Western, or we're American, or whatever. But truthfully, there's a huge difference. They all have their own motivations, they all have their own reasons why they're doing it. And sometimes those reasons are actually in conflict. If you look at Israel's attacked by Hamas, attacked by Hezbollah, both of those groups are funded by Iran. When Bashar al-Assad fell apart in Syria, he was the leader of Syria, they had a massive civil war in Syria, and people were lining up left and right. Some were supporting Bashar al-Assad, some were supporting ISIS. And in that conflict, Hamas, which is a Sunni organization funded by Iran, fought on the side of ISIS. Bashar al-Assad is a stout ally of Iran. Hezbollah fought on the side of Bashar al-Assad. So on the battlefields of Syria, Hamas was fighting Hezbollah. But in the fight against Israel, they're joined at the hip. So there's always different motivations for these guys. And you can see, I mean, there's a reason the saying is, one man's freedom fighter is another guy's terrorist. And you see it even in our own cinema. I mean, who's seen the movie Outlaw Josie Wales? Surely somebody's seen that. It's a damn classic. So Outlaw Josie Wales, if you look at it as like an alien looking at it, he's a terrorist. I mean, his family got wiped out by the Union, and he took up arms and went doing irregular warfare, raiding guerrilla warfare behind the lines, and the Union said, that guy's a terrorist, and they caught him all and shot him all, and he got away. Well, the whole point of that movie, you're saying that guy's a hero. He is a hero in the movie, but he's doing what a lot of people do when they are formed up to be terrorists. That's what they're doing. So they all have unique motivations, and the Ghost has a really unique motivation. So he's got his own reasons why he's doing it, and he has Iran has what they're doing. Now his goals are aligned with Iran's goals simply because he's attacking Israel, but they're not lockstep. He's not going to follow Iran just because Iran says so. And it created a duality that I kind of liked, which is why I wanted to put him in the book. So I had to figure out a way. So I basically said, well, he's in prison, I'll just break him out of prison and get him in play. Well, then you have to make a plausible reason. How am I going to get that guy out of prison in the United States of America? A classified prison, by the way. It's the cloud. Nobody else knows about it. The only people who know he even exists are the task force, my main element. He's not like in just a regular prison. And so I was sitting there thinking, you know, you can't smuggle in a bunch of Quds Force guys from Iran. That will never work. It's not realistic. And as it turns out, I was doing more research, and it turns out Iran likes hiring biker gangs. So they hired a biker gang in Germany to blow up a bunch of synagogues. And they hired Hell's Angels in Canada to cross the border and assassinate somebody in the United States. And that said two things to me. Canada's got Hell's Angels, and they're doing that because they can get underneath the radar. So our intelligence organizations are looking at Iran. We've got a bandwidth doing this, and we know all the bad actors, and we know who's doing what and everything else. Well, if you hire somebody who's a criminal, that's somebody else's bandwidth. And they can get through the border and do what they need to do. Luckily, we broke both of those up, and even more luckily, I was like, that's how I'm getting the Ghost out. I'll get the biker gang, break him out of prison. So that's what I did. So now I had the plot going, and I had a secondary plot, which I don't want to give too much away, I don't give spoilers away, but there's fentanyl is obviously a big deal. And it's deadly. Fentanyl is super deadly. I couldn't believe how deadly. I started doing research on that, and I was like, man, it just like grains of salt is enough to kill you. And the reason they do that is because of cost measures. They used to smuggle in, drug runners would smuggle in bales of marijuana. Well, that's big product. And then they figured out cocaine. I can get just as much money on this much cocaine as I can that bale of marijuana, and I can sell a barrel of cocaine and make a fortune. Well, they're doing the same thing with fentanyl. This whole thing of cocaine, I can get this much, and I can still make a fortune. I just dilute it. Unfortunately, half the time they don't do it right, and that's why you have ODs and everything else. So I looked at fentanyl, so that's something the biker gang would want, and that's actually kind of a weapon of mass destruction if you had enough of it. I won't give any more away, but they're going to try to do something nefarious with it. So once I do all the research and I have a framework in my head, which is I don't do an outline, I do what I call a framework, where I know the threat vector and I know the setting. And I would say that I would say 100% of the time I know how it's going to end. I don't know anything in between. That's all going to be figured out later. But I know how it ends. And that changed about on No Fortunate Son. Book 7. So slower on that one. So by the time I got to No Fortunate Son, the ending changed. Not because I, had any epiphanies, just because I liked the better ending. So now I'd say about 80% of the time I know the ending. This time I did not. Well, I thought I did, but that didn't come to fruition. So when I have all that, so if I can get on the ground and do on-the-ground research, I will. And most definitely, if it's somewhere on the earth that I can put my boots on, I will do it. That's not to say, there's crazy places like, I'm not going to Syria, but I can fake the funk on that because I've done enough stuff in Iraq that I can say, okay, it's probably like that in Syria. And I'm never going to Russia because I've used Putin in a book twice and I'd never come back out. So we're going to go now. We plan a trip to Argentina, and the book research trips, people look at those things and say, "Oh, you're just going on vacation," but you're really racing around. 100 miles an hour. I don't have. Have you seen the movie Vacation with Chevy Chase? And he comes out to the Grand Canyon and goes, That's what I'm doing for everything. I don't have any time to. I got enough time to say, is this thing going to work for the book or is it not? And I move out. And usually, what I've come to find out is I have a laundry list of what I'm going to go look for. But I found out there's a 50% that I'm looking for, but there's 50% in the country that I have no idea about that's looking for me, and I don't know it until I see it. And when I'm on the ground, something will hit me, I'll say, what? You gotta be kidding me, that goes on here? You're talking to local. Usually you talk to taxi drivers or bartenders or somebody like that, and they'll know the inside skinny of what's going on. And you figure out what'll work for the book and what doesn't. And I wish I could use Google Earth. Like a lot of people can write a book on Google Earth and do really well at it. I can't. I've got to see what the culture's like. Every culture is different. If you try to get on a metro in Japan, if you're being polite, you're going to get run over. If you go to a metro in Switzerland, it's after you. No, after you. After you. The door closes and it goes away and nobody got on. So every culture is completely different, and I want to know what the culture is. There's always some aspect of culture that I've never heard of that I learn when I'm there. Like the mate drink in Argentina, they all drink mate, which is a form of tea, and they all communally drink it with a straw, and they make the tea, and they sell mate kits, and it's kind of a thing they do when they have breaks. They drink mate. I'd never heard of that until they started making some mate and have us drink it. And then they pass it around, and everybody's slobbering on the draw. I'm like, I don't drink tea. Go somewhere else. But that ended up in the book, so I figured out a way that I needed some kind of thing that was uniquely Argentina that could help the task force track stuff, and it was a mate kit. Other things that I never knew of, we had tour guides driving us around, and his gas gauge was really weird. The whole car front was weird, his gauges and everything. And so I asked him about it. I said, what is that? He says, oh, this car is running on liquid natural gas. I'm like, what? And he said, yeah. I said, well, can you show me? So he pulls over, opens the front. It's a regular car with a regular gas tank, but in the front is a valve you can turn on, and in the trunk is a giant tank of liquid natural gas. And the Ubers use them, taxis use them, anybody who drives a lot uses liquid natural gas because the state funds the liquid natural gas if you have a ticket to do that. And it's just like a forklift. You see a forklift with a tank on it, they're running on it. I saw that and was like, car bomb. It's much easier to blow up a liquid natural gas tank than it is a tank full of gasoline, because if the gas tank's full, it doesn't explode. It's the vapors that blow up. So that's what I ended up using it for. I got me a car bomb, ready-made VBIED, which ends up in play in the book. So we started out, Elaine used to be just me going because I couldn't afford the trips. So I would be on military transport, flying to UAE or wherever. And eventually Elaine said she wanted to start coming. So then I said, if you want to come, you got to plan the whole damn thing. So she does. I tell her, she used to make, I had things because I'm geographically challenged. I was in Istanbul, and I said I need to go to Romania. I'm going to cross the border and go to Romania. She wasn't with me. I'm calling her back home, talking on iMessage. And she says, that's like a 9-hour train ride. It's like, no, it's not. It's not right next door. She says, no, Bulgaria is right next door. Romania's ways away. So I said, roger that. Give me a train ticket to Bulgaria. That's where I'm going. So now she plans this stuff. We had the same thing when we did, somebody had American Trader in there. So I said I want to go to Taiwan and Australia, and she was like, Australia is nowhere near Taiwan, right? But I said, I don't care, we're doing it. So we went to Argentina and I let her plan it. And so she naturally has learned that now I'm going to start planning stuff that has nothing to do with the book. It's something I want to do. And I had to go to the Triple Frontier, where all the bad people are. Right there at the juncture, there's a town called Puerto Iguazu. It's right there on the Triple Frontier. It's supposed to be criminal haven. Well, the good thing is they also have Iguazu Falls are right there, which is one of the 8th wonder of the world. Tons of tourists go there. So you're not going to get mugged or anything. They keep the petty crime down. And so I didn't really worry about going up in there. And so she got a tour guide, and he met us at the hotel. And the first thing he said was, "Give me your passports." And I thought, what is he going to put us in the trunk of the car now? And so we gave him the passports. And next thing I knew, we drove across the border to Brazil. We crossed the border. And it turns out there's 2 Iguazu cities. There's Foz Iguazu, which is in Brazil, and there's Puerto Iguazu, which is in Argentina. And she got a tour of the Foz side, she was apologizing, and it worked out perfectly. Because the reason Hezbollah is so predominant down there is it's an enormous number of diaspora of Lebanese are right there. In fact, if you count 2nd and 3rd generation, there are more Lebanese in Brazil than there are in Lebanon. And so we crossed the border. And sure enough, there's Arabic everywhere. We went to an Islamic center. They showed us all around the Islamic center, which is exactly what I needed to see. Everything they showed us, they had Arabic tourist shops, everything. So I left there, and that was just a happy mistake. And I was able to use that. And then went through Brazil, everything I could see in Brazil, everywhere. There was a couple of places, La Boca. I'm always looking for the sleazy places. And La Boca, from my research, was a sleazy place. Oh yeah, we went all over Argentina. So we went through Buenos Aires down. But we're in La Boca and Buenos Aires. And there's a little street there called El Camino. And it's all painted. It's a really cool street. It's an artsy place. It used to be where the dock workers lived, and now it's all these arts and crafts, which worked out perfect for the book. I was like, I can see right now what's going to happen. It's a ring with a razor wire, and you're told, don't stay here. When the sun goes down, you gringos need to hit the road. But in the daytime, you're perfectly fine. So that works out perfect for the book. So then we have to, since we're going to Argentina, we've got to see, you're never going to come back again. So I give her some leeway, and she says, hey, we're going to go down to Tierra del Fuego, this place called Ushuaia, which is known as the end of the earth. It's this little bitty town at the end of the earth, which is where the ships go to the Antarctic. I mean, you were out there. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to use this in the book. Because why on earth would all this activity in Buenos Aires end up at the end of the earth? Well, then she sprung it on me that she's got a helicopter tour. And she shows me, we'll never get a chance to do this again. We're going to fly up to a glacier. And I was kind of steamed at that point because it's not cheap. And there's really no way I'm going to use a helicopter tour in the book. And it's a Bell 407 on their picture, just like you see the Bell 407 4 doors. And then when we got there, it was this Robinson helicopter that looked like it ran on a rubber band. It had a hamster in the front or something. And I mean, it's one of those ones with a stalk that sticks up that really looks like they usually use them at state fairs. Somebody does $5 rides. That's what it was. And we got on, it was an abandoned airfield, and the international airport was across the channel. We were on the old international airport, which is now grown over with weeds. And there was a military barracks there, and we took off, and the guy was super nice to us, the guy who was flying it. Used to fly for their version of the FBI. And as we took off, I was like, I think I can use this in a book. So that ended up in the book as well. And Elaine said, see, she's like doing right now. See, told you so. So I get through all the research, and one thing I did, I learned, I used to have to, I take just a ton of pictures, and I always had to take a picture of the street sign. So I take a picture of something so I can remember it, then I take a picture of a street sign so I could find it again on Google Maps. After 6 months later, you're trying, when you're writing it, you're like, I remember that place, but I don't know where it is. So I thumb through my pictures and find the street name and then type that in, and it'll sometimes come up, sometimes it doesn't. Well then, I'm not sponsored by Garmin, but if someone's from Garmin is here, they can certainly. I have a Garmin watch, which all I do is I hit track me. I just get a GPS lock, hit track me, and it follows me all day long. And whenever I hit a spot, I drop a waypoint, a breadcrumb. I hit another spot, drop a breadcrumb. Then when I get back, I can load that GPX file straight into Google Maps, and the entire route just appears with all my waypoints. And then I can tie my pictures that I took to that waypoint. And so when I'm doing the research, and I think, remember this, where was that? The worst thing I have to know is, hey Elaine, what day was it when we were doing X? She tells me the day, the GPX file has the days on them. I go to that day and go, oh, that's right, here I am. And then I can really use the map. So it's really sped up my ability to do research. It's tax write-off. Put a new one of these out next year, I'm getting a tax write-off. So then I get home, now it's time to write the book. And so I sit down, and in my head I've got what I'm going to do. And I start writing this thing and go all the way through. I'm just the best book ever, I am sailing along. And right before I guess I need to tell you this. So the culminating event was going to be a new technology that Iran had invented for their ballistic missiles. They invented a ballistic missile that'll penetrate the Aero system, the Iron Dome, all the systems, David Sling, all these things that Israel has to knock out ballistic missiles. They figured out a way to bypass them. And they were going to strike Israel's nuclear capability, their response, the nuclear capability in Tel Aviv, and wipe Israel off the map, basically. And that was the culminating event that Pike's racing to stop. And then Israel attacked Iran, fought them for 2 weeks, decimated their entire ballistic missile infrastructure, and then we did Midnight Hammer and blew up everything else. And I told my editor, we're doomed. I mean, the book is done. I mean, none of this is going to work. They completely eviscerated everything. And the problem with, you want to be cutting edge, you want to be looking around the corner and stay on the cutting edge, but the problem with current events is they're current. This had only happened to me one other time in my entire writing existence. I was writing Dead Man's Hand. And that involved Ukraine and Putin, which is why I won't go to Russia. But and I told my publisher there's two risks with this book. Number one, the Ukraine-Russian war ends either in a Ukraine victory or a Russian victory or a stalemate. I don't think that's going to happen. I studied it quite a bit, and I think it's still going to go on, which obviously it is. And number two, Putin falls out of power. I say he's a survivor, KGB guy. I don't see that happening either, but those are risks. I had already turned that book in when Prigozhin, the Wagner boss, left Ukraine, crossed the border with his string of tanks and went to Moscow to do a coup. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Could you have waited 2 months? That'll look great 2 months from now. So in this case, I told my editor that, she was just panicking saying, we're done. What are we gonna do? We're gonna push the whole book back for a year, and you gotta rethink everything. And I said, no, it's not that bad. Most of the book is in Ukraine, in Argentina. Most of it exists. Yeah, the ending's doomed, and maybe we just say the end and have people figure it out. But I started thinking about it, and I told her that this is like I did a hunt for Bigfoot, and the whole book is the hunt for Bigfoot. That's my big thing, and the culminating event's going to be when we capture Bigfoot at the end. And I write the entire hunt, and as I'm just about to write the capture, somebody informs me that Bigfoot's fake. There are no Bigfoots. And then you have to sit there and say, okay, well, the whole book's doomed. Or you just find another Bigfoot. I just need a different Bigfoot. So if Bigfoot's fake, what else is real? And the rest of the book would work with some rewrites. And so I started looking at other threats, and instead of being destroyed, now I look like Nostradamus. Because we're fighting Iran right now. I was reading the book, I'm writing another book right now, and so I reread my other book, and I was afraid that it wouldn't hold up, but instead it reads like somebody wrote it yesterday. And because I picked the refined uranium everybody's talking about. Where did your refined uranium go? Is it underground? Is it over here? Is it over there? You're going to give us that stuff, or we're going to keep bombing you. We're never giving you our refined uranium. Well, I know where it is. Read my book. I'll tell you exactly where that stuff is. So that really worked out well. And but it was a long, harrowing, hair-pulling, what's going to happen next. In fact, when we attack yet again, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. But the way the wars worked, it reads exactly if you read what these Iranians are saying. In fact, the head of the IRGC, because we killed multiple heads of the IRGC, the current head of the IRGC has a red notice from Interpol, wanted for murder in Argentina because he was the mastermind of blowing up the Jewish center I discussed before. And he's the head guy in Iran right now. So I look prescient, but really I was just super lucky. So that's basically it from flash to bang of how Shadow Strike came out and what the thought process I was when I was in there. I will open up the floor to questions. Not a single one. Yes, ma'am.
So when I imagine authors writing a book, like logistically take me through, because that is a lot of pages. So are you using like a Word doc? Like how do you keep all of that information? Because I'm assuming you're saying you gotta do rewrites, you gotta go back to this and that. How do you manage all that data?
Yeah, I just use straight a Word doc. There are a lot of programs you can use where you can type all your characters into this and pull the bubble up and all that. And I tried to do that, and it's just so much of a pain. It's just like I just type my characters in the bottom when I come with a new name, and I'll scroll down. Mainly because I can keep in my head the characters who are American, but like American Trader, the characters are Chinese. I mean, I don't know how to. So I can't keep that in my head, so I put them down at the bottom of the page. And I have, which is why I brought my props. This goes around with me everywhere I go, which is just a journal, but this is the current book.
Wow.
And so I take, I just get inserts in here for each book, and that's the current book I'm working on right now. And I'll just jot notes down, notes, and I can refer back to that. And it's chaotic. Don't get me wrong, it's not the best, because I'll have to draw something here, remember this, and then when I flip through, I'll find it again. But for the most part, I do keep it up in here. I have all the pictures, I have my GPX files, I have that kind of stuff, and that's what I refer back to. But as far as where the plot's gonna go and that kind of stuff, I already have it. I need the key point, but I don't need to know what's gonna happen at that key point, because I've already thought about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how many books do you generally become involved with at the same time? Do you focus on one book and kind of play with the other ones? How does that
No,
work?
I give 100% into each book I write, 100%, and that has bit me in the butt more times than I can count, because what you're doing in that book for 100% works for that book, but then you realize that Pike Logan exists in a universe, and you're writing the next book, and you're like, why did I do that in that book? Because it really worked out for that book, but now what am I going to do for this one? And a classic example is, I wrote a book called Daughter of War, which had a young Syrian refugee in it.
The best one.
And she was going to start off at chapter 4, she was exiting stage left, never to be seen again. I had decided if I was going to kill her, she just runs away or whatever. She had a cell phone that was going to generate the plot going forward. By the time I got to chapter 4, I liked her too much. So she ended up taking over the entire book. To the point where I had to change the title and everything else. I love that book, I'm really proud of the book, but then when I was done, Amina now exists. She is in the Pike Logan universe. So I'm writing the next book, you've got to address that for longtime readers, like, what the hell happened to Amina? So I start the chapter off with all of them at a funeral. Gathered around a grave because she got hit by a car. No, I had to figure out, what am I going to do with her? So I focus solely on that one book. Now it can be compressed. I was doing 2 books a year, but I'm doing it on that book, I'm doing this book. And then that really got confusing on book tours, because I'm promoting one book while I'm editing a second book while I'm writing a third book. And you get some questions, you're like, well, when I was in China, and they're like, what are you talking about? This book's in South America. But I do one at a time. I don't think I could do 2 at a time, I'd screw it up.
So you brought up Amina. Do you ever start with the character and then figure the story from the character, or does it always start with the thread and bring in the characters?
It's gone both ways. In her case, she was just going to be a bit character, and she grew
Yeah.
out of that. But other times, there's been it starts with the character, and I start building around that. Sometimes the threat dictates what it is. So for American Trader was Taiwan, so I had to go to Taiwan. Other times, Elaine wanted to go to Ireland, and I had no idea what in the world am I going to write about Ireland. So I researched it and started with the IRA, but it's because she picked that area, not because the plot dictated that area. Enemy of Mine was Lebanon, and it was involved Hezbollah, which is going to be Lebanon, it's going to be Qatar, going to be UAE. So it's kind of gone both ways.
Yeah, I'd sure like to see Amina go off to college and run into all the nonsense from overseas.
Yeah.
Give her
So
a
I'm still
feature.
learning.
Give her a
Amina's in this
feature
book.
role.
She
Yeah,
starts
she
off
got
in
a
this
chapter.
book. She's in it right off the beginning, doing exercise in Charleston. So you get to see her for a split second anyway.
Do you have any interest or any thoughts of writing another book about what's going on with the aerospace NASA scientists that are being killed? There was a family that just died, and what a great book. What's going on and sort of.
Yeah, I've seen that, and we, I won't poo-poo it completely, but as a society, we tend to glom onto things that it's like shark sightings. You know, look, sharks are killing everybody, when if you look statistically, they're killing just as much, it's just now making the news. You remember back a while ago, there was clown sightings. You remember the clown sightings? There's killer clowns are everywhere, and they're in the woods, and everybody started seeing clowns all over the place. And then just one day, nobody talked about clowns anymore. So I'm not so sure, I have not delved into that, but if I were a betting man, I'd be willing to bet that people are making connections that don't exist. That this guy legitimately died in a car wreck, and this guy legitimately ran away, or
Just
whatever.
coincidence.
Just coincidence that we're tying together because they all happen to be scientists. I'm not even sure they're all scientists. Half the time you start digging into something like that, it's like she was a receptionist at a place that has scientists. And then it's like, there's another one, when it's not really.
But it was sad, the whole family was killed recently.
Yeah, I haven't-
South Carolina.
Yeah, I haven't, South Carolina,
Yeah.
probably by tigers. I just found out we have a tiger place in South Carolina. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
When did you get the inkling this is what you wanted to do as a second career?
I didn't. I honestly didn't. It found me. I've always been a voracious reader as a child. I read everything, you know, Ray Bradbury, Heinlein, you name it, read it all. And I always just had in the back of my head that one day I was going to write a book. I didn't have any intention of being a writer. I thought my wife would say, that's a really good book, Brad. And it would be sitting on my bedside table and that'd be it. And I never had any chance to write because of my deployments and everything else. I was at a special mission unit at Fort Bragg, and I needed a break. I've been deployed since 9/11, and I just finished up Squadron Command. And I got a job teaching, as she mentioned, I was an assistant professor of military science at Citadel in the RGC department, was the XO of the department. And I got down there, and I mean, I had a lot of time on my hands. It was, you know, I was 9 in the morning going, what are we doing now? Because once you develop the classes, I mean, it's college, I'm teaching 3 classes on Monday, 2 classes on Tuesday, and that's just rinse and repeat. And after the first year, because you had to build all the classes, at least I did, the stuff that ROTC was giving me, I was like, I'm not teaching that crap. So I built my own classes and taught everybody there. Well, the second year, it was super rinse and repeat. I didn't even have to build any classes. I now had all the classes. And so I came home to my wife one day and said, I think I want to write a book. And she said, well, whatever. Hold along first. And so I did. I wrote the book, and it sold. I mean, I had some inkling, I guess. I thought it would sell because I wouldn't have submitted it. And it sold, and I had to make a hard choice. I'd come out on the promotion list to Bird Colonel. My next assignment was 2 years unaccompanied to Pakistan. My daughter was entering high school. My wife was an Air Force brat. She went to 4 high schools in 40 years. She was like, I don't want to wish that on our own daughters. And I couldn't promote the book. They wouldn't publish the book unless I could promote it. And I was going back into a classified assignment, which was absolutely not going to happen. And so I had to make a choice. And I turned down the promotion and retired from the military. So I kind of sleptwalk into being a writer.
Glad it worked out.
Yeah.
That's right.
How did you become a special operator?
Well, I mean, you try out for it. That's kind of a funny story too. So I went to college, University of Texas, one of the best students they ever had. And I was flunking out of school. My freshman year, I was flunking out and they were gonna boot me out of school. And my dad told me, if you get booted out of school, you're going in the Army. The Army was the last thing on my mind. I had never considered the military. That was be all you can be days, and I was like, Dad Ender's going in the Army. What do you mean I'm going in the Army? And so I was flunking out of school, so I was going in the Army. And so I started researching the Army. And the more I looked at it, I was like, this doesn't look too bad. I mean, they're gonna pay me to jump out of airplanes, they're gonna pay me to run around the woods with a gun. I grew up on a farm, I camped all the time. I found special forces, found the Ranger battalions, found all that. And so what I call my second freshman year, I joined ROTC. With the express purpose, I wanted to go to special forces. But at that time, you never mentioned that. Rambo had come out, and if you said you want to be in special forces, they wouldn't even let you in. I told, I'm coming to ROTC and I want to be in special forces, and they said, hit the bricks. So I came back to a different person and said, what do you want to go in the Army for? I have no idea. I was hoping you'd pay for college. You're in! But while I was there, I wasn't sure if I could do special forces, if I had it within me to do it. So my father had gone to airborne school. He was an Air Force guy, but he'd gone to airborne school, and it was the hardest school in the universe to hear his stories. So I'll go to airborne school first while I'm still a cadet before I sign a contract. If I make it through that, then I'll know I can do special forces. So I did go to airborne school, and it turned out it was not the hardest school in the Army. It wasn't that difficult at all. And so I knew, I was like, okay, that's not the all end all. Maybe for the Air Force, but not, this is doing something else. So that's for my wife, her dad's Air Force. So I said, what else can I do as a cadet? And Ranger School, back then you could go to Ranger School as a cadet. You had to compete. They only sent 75 cadets a year, so you did a huge competition where they racked and stacked everybody, and I earned a slot to Ranger School and went to Ranger School and successfully completed Ranger School. And at that point I was like, okay, I think you can do this. And so then I went in. But it takes a long time to get into special forces, so I knew I have to go infantry. I want to go light infantry, which I did. So then I was a rifle rifle platoon leader, rifle company XO, scout platoon leader, and then by that time had achieved enough rank to try out for special forces assessment and selection. Went and did that, then I went through the qualification course, and then you run up to about the 10-year mark, you're a major, and you're no longer running around the woods. And so I was either going to leave the Army or I was going to try out for a special mission unit. But nobody ever makes it in a special mission unit. I know tons of people who went and came back. But then I thought, you don't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So I put my packet in. And then, no one's more surprised than me, I made it through that selection. And then made it through OTC, their version of the Special Forces Qualification Course, which was brutal too. I thought when you got through selection, that was the end of it. No, the guy pulled us in, we had 5 officers and said, we need every officer we can get here. Unfortunately, statistically, only 2 of you are gonna graduate this course. I mean, I looked around, there were some studs. I was like, I'm doomed. But when it finished up, there's only 2 of us who graduated that course. So that's what I did. And once I got into the special mission unit, I spent the rest of my career there until I went to the Citadel.
Amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have it back to the writing part. Yes, you wrote the book, but author after author will tell you the hardest thing is to get an agent and to get, somebody to actually purchase your manuscript. How did that happen? I mean, you were a debut, no one knew you author.
Yeah, so I was extremely lucky. In fact, I was blissfully ignorant because when my book sold, if I hadn't known how hard it was to get published and how hard it is to stay published, I figured I've done one book and the rest of it's going to happen. Well, if that first book doesn't sell, even if they buy the book, if it doesn't sell, I'm looking for the next big thing. Thanks for being here. Unfortunately for me, I'd already retired from the Army, so I was kind of locked into this at this point. And I found an agent. I sent a ton of letters out. I did, Google. I didn't have any special help. But the first thing you always do is, anybody in my family know a literary agent? And Elaine at that time was, before she became she's the DCOE, the deputy commander of everything. Before she became that, she was a financial analyst for a company. And so she asked her boss, who knows everybody in the entertainment industry, she did cable stuff, and he knew the producer of Dexter, the TV show. And the office next to Dexter was a literary agent. So that's how I got my literary agent, except it turned out that because I didn't know anything, literary agents actually focus on things. So they'll do nonfiction, they'll do military fiction, they'll do romantasy, they'll do pure romance, things like that. She did chick lit. She was never going to take my manuscript. She agreed to look at it, and this is how pathetic I was. Everything they do in the writing industry is word count. It's all word count. There's no such thing as how many pages is a book, no such thing as how many chapters is a book. It's all word count. Because there'll be more pages in a mass market paperback than there is in a hardback, or large print book's going to have more pages than a regular book. So it's just word count. Word count never changes. And I didn't know that. So I wanted to know when I've reached the level of a book. And so I pulled 5 hardbacks off my shelf. I counted the first words in the first 3 pages, and I made a huge average. I got a number, and I expanded the font and word until it made that number on a single page. And then I typed my book. And that's what I sent in, and she was like, "Is this a joke? I mean, you having trouble reading?" So I really didn't know anything, and she was very polite. She said, "Thanks, this is, it's got a lot of potential, and she said, "Would you like to work with an editor?" And I said, "Sure, I don't know what I'm doing." And she put me in touch with a freelance editor who used to be in the publishing industry. She was the person who had found the book Bridges in Madison County. So she had used to be a bigwig in the industry. She was from the United Kingdom, and she charged a fortune, which I couldn't afford. I was still in the military. And I left Fort Bragg where milk was a nickel and moved to Charleston where it was $5. I didn't have 2 nickels scraped together. She found out I was in the military. Her dad was in the military, had been in Sudan. She lived all over the world, and she took pity on me. And she said, "I'll take X% of your first contract," which told me 2 things. Number 1, she does see something here. She wouldn't make that deal. Number 2, X% of 0 is 0. So there's absolutely no reason for me not to do this. And I did. And she did make the book a whole lot better. I mean, it was brutal. She was so cruel. But I eventually finished it. I didn't even have an email address because all my email addresses were military. And because I wanted to keep the book completely separate from government, I had to buy a computer. It was a little bitty netbook, which is going to go into some Hall of Fame. It's about this big. It was $200. All I could run was Word because I didn't want to type anything on a government system. I didn't want to use government email, none of that, because I didn't want anybody to say there's some kind of conflict of interest. So I was using my wife's email, and she would get Carolyn's brutal letters before I would. And I'd get home from work at the Citadel, and she'd say, "You got a letter?" And then she'd leave the room. So when that was all said and done, she gave me a lot of advice, who to contact and things like that, where to send you manuscripts and that kind of stuff. But I got, people talk about all the brutal rejection letters they got. It was so bad they didn't even respond. I mean, I wish I had a rejection letter. It's kind of like it just went to a black hole. They didn't bother to respond at all. And so I eventually, the same agent I have right now, he contacted me after, and they all want something different. So some want a synopsis, a 1-page synopsis. Some want a 2-page synopsis. If you exceed that, you throw it away. Some want a query letter. Some want the first 5 pages of the actual manuscript. They all want something different to make sure that you're reaching out to them and you didn't just BCC 1,000 agents with the same thing. And I don't remember what he wanted, whatever it was, I sent it to him. And he emailed back and said, "I don't know how many other people are competing for this, but I want to be your agent, send me the manuscript now." And I looked at Lance like, what's wrong with that guy? I mean, I was like, he's the only one that's ever responded. And he took me on. That's how I found my agent. And he sold the manuscript. He's been with me ever since.
And you've been with Harper Cobb?
No, I started out with Dutton. I was with Penguin Random House, Dutton's subsidiary of that. And that was super lucky too. Do you guys care about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so the guy that picked me up, Ben Severe, was a real low editor, and he purchased my book. And he asked me 3 questions, which buoyed me. Number 1, were you really special forces? Because people lie about that. Number 2, did you really write this book? Because apparently people lie about that too. And number 3, can you write another one? And so I thought, okay, this guy's serious. And so I went with him. Well, as fate would have it, he went from his lowly editor, he worked his way up the ladder until he was the publisher of Dutton. He was the head guy. And what happens when you're doing marketing? I thought it was all communism. That if you had $10 for marketing and you had 10 books, everybody gets $1. And you get your dollar and you get your dollar. That's not what happens. They all go in, all the editors go in and start fighting for the marketing dollars. And you could end up with one book that gets $9.99 and 9 books that split that last dollar or last penny. Well, when your editor happens to be the publisher, you get a little special help there. So as he moved up, it really helped me out. And eventually, that's the reason I ended up moving from Dutton, was he is now the head publisher of Grand Central, the entire house. He got another promotion to a different company, and that's when I moved to Morrow. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Let me ask you if you could write a second book. Were you confident you could write a second book?
I was already writing it. Lane said, "You were so arrogant." It was all necessary for us. I actually took a bunch of cadets to Egypt as one of my final things, and that was my very first book research trip. Don't tell the Army, did it on the Army dime. They were all going to language class, and I was running around Cairo, taking pictures. Got home and started writing it before this one ever came out, One Rough Man even came out. One last question? Yes, sir.
You shared a lot about your research process, traveling and connecting your stories to place.
Ask him what he thinks
When do
about
you
what's
feel
going on.
it's okay to kind of just step away from the
Can't
reality
say probably.
and just sort of go to that whole cloth? Or is that a part of your process given how realistic
I would say that it's part of my process to be super realistic, but it's truthfully because it's much easier for me to see something and write about it than it is for me to make it up. So if I am going to do an assault, like if I was planning on hitting this library, I would look at this room and say, okay, I've got 2 breach points, I've got 3 breach points, and I would then plan how I'm going to do this assault, because it's in my head. I know exactly how I would hit this building, I know how many troops it would take, I know everything. But then as I'm writing it, if it turns out that I've got to have somebody here for squirter control and that's just not working with the team, I erase that breach. So, because I'm writing fiction. So I will change things. In One Rough Man, there's a pub that I was detailed to. Well, I was working in DC, and I had used to go to this pub all the time. We all did. It was owned by a guy that used to work at the building I was working in, and so I did a hit there for the book. And as I was writing the thing, I remembered there was an alley, and they're going to come out of this alley. Well, I looked at it, and my memory was gone. There was no alley there. Well, there is now. It's in my book. Because if I need it, I'll change it. But I do stick as close to it. I learned something else when you're researching what somebody would really do in a book, it's not nearly as enjoyable for the reader unless they understand what's going on at the time. And so there's a lot of things that I find that would go the seediest place there is, and this is the seediest place, and it's something really bad. But nobody wants to read about it. They've never been there. So I had used a tourist site in Cairo, a market, and I got a lot of emails saying, I've been there, and I was like, oh, they really enjoy that. So I always find something that people will recognize and people will know, and then I have to figure out a way is that being used. What's that? Yes, exactly. Yeah, and everybody had been there, and they wanted to, I know what that place is. So if you've been to Argentina, which a lot of people have, they've been to Guazú Falls. I used the Guazú Falls. They've been all over Buenos Aires. They've probably been to El Camino, the street I was just talking about. People have been to Ushuaia will know exactly what I'm talking about. Tierra del Fuego, there's a cabin that I use in the book. It's in the National Forest. And we were on a tour to see the National Forest, and I saw the cabin. So I went over there and took a bunch of pictures of it and said, that's where this place is going to end. And so when I see it on the ground, that's what I use, but I know that the reader, I could say that I went to some dark, dirty alley in Cairo, and the reader's like, I don't know anything about that. Do something on the pyramids? Yeah, they get that. I remember that, I used to be there. So I do include that in there. And it makes it harder to write, because, a lot of the stuff you wouldn't do at a place that's got all those people. But I figure out a reason every time. Yes, ma'am.
If you don't feel comfortable answering this, I understand. But I never would be able to talk to somebody with all the knowledge and background that you have in the military. And if you were to look in your crystal ball, what do you think about what's going on in Iran? Thoughts?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that everything has gotten so partisan that is, I hesitate to say anything, because
I understand.
if I describe somebody dropping a rock from their hand, and I describe it, then they'll say, you hate the guy who dropped the rock. I say, no, gravity exists, and I'm just telling you what gravity's doing. So there's the war has a logic all its own, and this war is going just with the logic. We have a tendency to, and we've done it since Vietnam, if we had the body count in Vietnam, you kill enough of those guys, we'll win. Then we're kind of doing that now. When I see how many missiles we've blown up, how many drones we've intercepted, how many ships we've sunk, that's basically a body count mentality. It doesn't mean you're imposing your will on those guys. Harry Summers was a guy that went to the peace talks with Vietnam in Paris, sat across from his counterpart in the NVA, and said, you know, you never beat us on the battlefield. And the NVA colonel said, you're right, but it's also irrelevant. And we're kind of in that now, that there's a lot of competing things that are going on right now with Iran that you don't only hear in the news. Top of the list is the War Powers Resolution. This administration did not go to Congress to get authorization. Prior administrations built up, a huge following and all that. Because he didn't do that, he used the War Powers Resolution, which starts a clock right away. Without any authorization to use the military force, you've got 60 days. At the end of 60 days, you're ceasing hostilities, or you're going to get authorization. Him getting authorization at the end of this is probably not going to happen. Susan Collins, a bunch of Republicans have already said they're not going to vote for it. That being the case, Iran's not living in a cave. They know that. They know that this 60 days, there's going to be a vote. And so they will sit there and drag this out for that very reason. They may change their mind after the 60 days, and if we get the AUMF, then they'll come to the table, but they want to see what happens there. That's number one. Number two, the administration, just because of what has happened in the past, there's an agreement that we could agree with and that the Iranians could agree with. We're trying to get our own security. And I'll say this, first of all, Iran is a complete malign influence. They've killed people all over the world. They're just bad to the bone. I have no sympathy for them. If they're left tomorrow, more power to them. But now if we had an agreement where we can guarantee our security and they can guarantee theirs, we would take it. But now politics is going to come into play, because there's no way this administration can take any deal that remotely resembles the JPCOA that Obama did. It's got to be 10 times better than the JPCOA, even if we don't need 10 times the security. On the other side, on the enemy side, the Iranians, if you look at it from their eyes, are like, well, why would I do that? The last time I did something like this, you tore it up and started bombing me. So they're going to be much less inclined to give more than the JPCOA. They'll probably want to give less than JPCOA. And those competing things, we're in a battle of wills right now. And Iran's sole function is to survive. And our sole function is, we don't want to wake up, as the American populace, we don't want to wake up and pay for gas. The disparity between the difference in the wills here is huge. They're looking at the hangman's noose or survival. We're looking at the gas price going down. So they're looking at a rinse and repeat, and you can use this for just about any of the commodities. They kill 5 Americans, we get mad and we kill 500 Iranians. Iran lost 300,000 people in an 8-year war with Iraq, which is comparable to what we lost in World War II. They can take a pounding. So they kill 5 of us, we kill 500 of them. They kill 5 of us, we kill 500 of them. They're betting we'll quit before they will. And they're probably right. You get enough people killed over there, we'll say, well, what are we doing over there again? And you can use the kill I'm just talking about, plug in gas prices. Their entire economy shuts down because we're blockading the straits. They only care about the regime. Everybody else can suffer. So we pay $1 extra for gas, they get no gas. You repeat that enough, this $1 extra for gas is probably going to win. And so it's a battle of wills right now. And can't predict the future. They're still doing stuff. It could absolutely work out in our benefit. But I think we went in there and thought the regime would fall within 2 weeks.
Right.
And it didn't. And now we're like, what are we going to do now?
Stuck.
But eventually it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to make a vote. And if I were to predict, I would say that sooner or later, right before the War Powers ends, they're going to say, we're stopping Epic Fury. Tomorrow we start epic retribution or something else. So the clock starts again. There's gonna be some reason why the war
So
card
it's
says.
60 days, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. See,
Yes, ma'am.
I just can't help but wonder
I wonder why
what
they
you
were
think
stalling.
the nuclear threat of all of this is. That's
The-
what keeps me awake at night.
Well, they don't have anywhere near a nuclear capability. They have fuel that's not nuclear use yet, but it can be made into a nuclear grade within about 2 weeks, given the right environment, which we've blown up. So people talk about they can throw this bomb together in 2 weeks. No, they can get the fuel in 2 weeks. But it's literally, if you think about a car, you refine the gasoline and now have enough gasoline to run a car. I still gotta build a car. I mean, they have to have a missile that they can mount that thing on and launch somewhere, which is not technologically simple.
But there are other countries that are involved in this war, you know, that do have nuclear abilities.
Israel, yeah.
Yeah, and Israel and Iran are at war.
Yeah, I don't think
What
Israel,
the fuck?
Israel is using, they have that for the same reason that Iran wants it. It's a final line. The reason Iran wants a bomb, just looking at it from their eyes, you should always try to mirror your enemy. If you're gonna fight the enemy, you wanna know what that enemy is trying to do. They look at North Korea. There is absolutely no way on God's green earth we would ever do an epic fury against North Korea, because North Korea has exceeded that and now has 10 nuclear weapons. And when it comes down to the regime dying or releasing those weapons, they'll do it going out the door. So that is what Iran wants, a weapon as a fail-safe. If they had a weapon right now like Israel does, none of this would be going on. We wouldn't be doing it. And in fact, Ukraine had all the Soviet weapons. If they'd have kept the weapons in '94 instead of giving them up, Russia wouldn't attack Ukraine. I mean, it's a fail-safe to prevent people from trying to take over your country. We would never be doing decapitation strikes in Iran if somebody had a finger on a nuclear weapon. Because if you've got nothing else to lose, you'll punch the button. And that's why they want it. In fact, they may be driven further to get one now because they're like, we did the JPCOA, they jerked it out of here, now they killed everybody. If we had that weapon like North Korea did, we wouldn't be in this boat. We need a weapon. So,
Interesting.
Well, thank you, that was wonderful.
I want to continue. No.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Please join me in thanking you.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting in traffic.